Hello and welcome to Dongomet channel. Today I have some knives on the grass in front of me and I'm going to talk about them. Some of my viewers will be familiar with the sight of me out in the woods out back whacking at trees with knives, and that is something that I have been enjoying doing, and it kind of makes sense because I'm out there on the trails trying to keep the trails clear. We have a lot of low-hanging, spindly stuff. It's good with a machete. I can cut a lot of it with a tomahawk, but the bigger things, they're heavier. So every swing, if you're swinging a tomahawk to cut something that's 1/8 of an inch diameter, doesn't seem like so much of a trade-off. All of a sudden, it seems to make sense to have just a little belt knife that you can just, right? And in the imagination, actually, it's always very easy. But I am routinely disappointed by the performance of knives that I take out to try this task. And although I'm also very regularly very taken by the performance of certain knives, I'll just keep looking for new ones, and I won't necessarily I'm not sure I'm really keeping track of what's really good for what, so much as just playing around. So here, for example, I have the idea that this is a really good one. It is a Swamp Rat Knizk Works, which I'm quite certain can be taken to mean that this was made in China, inspired by the actual Swamp Rat brand knives, one of which is kind of more of a short sword that very much resembles this thing, but it's bigger. So this is not, quite certainly not an actual Swamp Rat. It's just an eBay purchase. And it claims to be an A8 steel. Why would they lie? I mean, it says Knizk Works. If it wasn't real A8 steel, then why wouldn't they say A18? That would cost more because of the extra etch. That's why. But I digress. I'm also not very good necessarily at keeping my blades clean. So if it can be something that is semi-stainless, that really would be a benefit, I suppose, to my lifestyle. Having said that, maybe I should just get better at doing blade maintenance. And I need some good old 5160 to inspire me to take care of my lovely steel. So this one, a few days ago, I was playing around with this, and by the day before yesterday, I got to regrinding. So I have footage of this knife in original condition, and now it's looking messy, but I should be able to tidy this back up, get it polished, and for now the performance is already, well, undoubtedly improved, because I took it from 30 thousandths of an inch behind the edge down to 25 to see how that goes, and redid the apex. So we've got thinner, fresher steel to cut on next time I go out with this. But having played around with that, I did start feeling like, this, well, for one thing, this handle shape is not really all that good. This tends to prang me, when I'm doing these cuts. So that's kind of an annoyance. The handle is very slippery, and it flew out of my hand a couple of times. So I think it's, it's more of a skinner or a cutter or what, all kinds of things, but probably wasn't really made to be a woods banger. I still think there's potential. A lot of it is just getting used to using the knife, right? So I know how hard to grip it so it doesn't go flying out of my hand, which is quite a lot harder than this. Just as smooth, just as smooth of a polish. Oh man, sorry about my filthy nails. This ram's horn, but it's so much grippier than the micarta. Can't even tell you. It's like 2-3 times grippier. It just locks on. And this doesn't need any protuberances there. It feels really good. It is very kind of squared off, but it's just rounded and chamfered enough that it's not going to blister me. And meanwhile, that's great for indexing in all your different positions, because sometimes you're slashing like this, sometimes you're slashing like that. It really helps you to orient the knife. And this knife has, if you look at the alignment of the cutting edge to the handle, it really has a kind of a sway back, which suggests that it's more for slashing than for chopping, which is also concurrent with the geometry. Meanwhile, these Buck Ron Hood collaboration knives have this very forward kick to the blade. And, sometimes, a lot of the time I feel like that's a really good thing, having that aggressive forward sweep. Got that in my jungly machete and on various things. But this is supposed to be better for slashing, having more of a backward sweep, like on this or on this one here. So I think, you're less likely to hang up when you have that. And it's giving you more of a kind of you're sliding along the apex there, you're slashing through. Whereas this is more of a kind of a trapping, aggressive chopper cut. So yeah, the ergos, this notion here, this straight handle, no lanyard, no nothing. If it's just something I need to pop off my belt and make a couple of quick cuts and put it back again, then having the lanyard dangling there can be a hassle, right? So if I don't need the lanyard, this one doesn't have a lanyard, this texture is very grippy. Same kind of thing, you whip it out, you do your cutting, put it back again. It's not like, let me strap my lanyard on and get to work for half an hour, necessarily. Sometimes you could be there for half an hour though, so maybe it's good to have the option. Sheaths. The sheath for this buoy, Bill Kennedy buoy, is magnificent. Sat here on my belt right now. And, it makes a difference having a beautiful knife in a beautiful sheath. It feels different when you're working out in the woods to having a knife that, maybe looks a little more utilitarian, a little more urban, a little more this or that, maybe your sheath, it's not quite so attractive, maybe it dangles lower, and that's nice. When things have snappers, it's not really always necessary, but to use it, right? So you can override the snapper on this one. On this one, I can just tuck it down behind my belt. I really don't need it either. Yeah, all these ones are really snappers of some kind, right? But this has its thing. You don't worry about it so much getting scuffed up, getting wet, getting muddy. It has this pocket on it. Yeah, here we go. When I went and found the thug, I discovered I still had this there. So that's kind of nice, if you're only wearing shorts. And you don't have a lot of cargo pockets, which I do. So right now, at some point I'm going to have to wash these shorts, and then I'm going to be stuck for pockets again. Discontinued pair of Wrangler shorts. Right, we'll put that back in there later. So what's my point? What am I trying to say? Not a lot. I guess I'm just making a video because out of habit. And well, one thing I will say is, man, sometimes I feel so starved for content that I would be really grateful just to sit and listen to someone talking about knives for 10 minutes. Just waffling, And I can think, well, I disagree with that. I agree with that. I'm not so sure about that. Maybe I'll leave a comment. Yeah. So I'm gonna take this one out and I'm gonna test this. And Jimbus Maximus reminded me about the thug. The thug. So I went and had to go and look. I had these two together and this was somewhere else. But I found them all. Thought it'd be cool to get them out together, you know. The thug, the punk, and the hoodlum. The hoodlum is the one I've used the most. And also, I didn't do good blade maintenance. So now she's rusty. But, you know, I could get that out in a twinkle with this lovely rod here, which I also thought I might show. It's a Falcon even. Pretty sure it's a 1000 grit. And you can get into your serrations and your plunge grinds and anything with that. So it's nice and long too. It's really like 12, 13, 12 inches long. Yeah. So yeah, here, these two examples, very similar size and weight. But obviously rather different stylistically. A lot more distal taper on the buoy. Yeah, different steels, different ergos. These handles, you know, it looks like it's got to be a way better handle, but in the use, I'm just not convinced. This thing, for example, that annoys me. This is liable to jab you. You know, the way this works here kind of locks your hand in the same way that this guard does. So I got to hand it to the ergos on this one, 100%, for my tastes. But then there's the question of the blades, how the blades will perform. You know, and I know that, or I don't know for a fact, but I'm getting the feeling that this is the right kind of grind. You know, flat grind. It's the right kind of grind for this kind of task that I got going. Yeah, I'll take these two out later and